Hello, and welcome to This Week in Tech Dystopia for the week ending October 3rd, 2021. Let me know what you think of the name in the comments. I called the first vid This Week in Tech Horror, but I think I like dystopia better since it often feels like we're living in some post-dystopian cyber world. If you've got thoughts, I want to hear them. I want these videos to be for you. And on that note, in our tech dystopia, privacy is dead. There's a multi-billion-dollar market for your phone's location data. A huge but little-known industry has cropped up around monetizing people's movements. Companies that you likely have never heard of are hawking access to the location history on your mobile phone. An estimated $12 billion market, the location data industry has many players: collectors, aggregators, marketplaces, and location intelligence firms, all of which boast about the scale and precision of the data they've amassed. Never forget that you are a resource to be mined, harvested, packaged, sold, and consumed, whether you want to be or not. Location firm Near describes itself as the world's largest data set of people's behavior in the real world, with data representing 1.6 billion people across 44 countries. Mobile Walla boasts 40-plus countries, 1.9 billion devices, 50 billion mobile signals daily, 5+ years of data. Xmode's website claims its data covers 25% of the adult US population monthly. In an effort to shed light on this little monitored industry, the markup has identified 47 companies that will harvest, sell, or trade in mobile phone location data. While hardly comprehensive, this list begins to paint a picture of the interconnected players that do everything from providing code to app developers, to monetize user data, to offering analytics from 1.9 billion devices, and access to data sets on hundreds of millions of people. 6 companies claimed more than 1 billion devices in their data, and at least 4 claimed their data was the most accurate in the industry. Now here's an image of various logos representing the biggest players in the data harvesting market. It's interesting to see AWS there, considering they host some of the largest platforms on the internet, such as Netflix. Makes you think. But what does privacy matter, right? So what if companies know your shopping habits or what movies you watch? Well, the article goes on. In 2020, Motherboard reported that Xmode, a company that collects location data through apps, was collecting data from Muslim prayer apps and selling it to military contractors. The Wall Street Journal also reported that in 2020, that Ventel, a location data provider, was selling location data to federal agencies for immigration enforcement. A Catholic news outlet also used location data from a data vendor to out a priest who had frequented gay bars, though it's still unknown what company sold that information. So we all know that governments typically need warrants to search and seize your property, including access to your specific device. But if that data is publicly available for sale on the open market, well, that's a whole different story. Many firms promise that privacy is at the center of their business and that they're careful to never sell information that can be tracked back to a person. But researchers studying anonymized location data have shown just how misleading that claim can be. Now, the article goes on to explain how data is collected from your phone and the various places your data will go. I've put a link in the description, and I highly recommend that you read the whole thing if you're interested, because it's very informative. And you know who I bet really wants this data? The companies that are monitoring their employees through keystroke tracking, screenshots, and facial recognition. The boss may be watching long after the pandemic ends. When Carrie Krutchik, an attorney for 34 years, was hired this spring for one of the legal field's fastest growing jobs, she expected to review case files at a pandemic-safe distance from the comfort of her Ohio home. Then she received a laptop in the mail with her instructions. To get paid, she'd have to comply with a company-mandated facial recognition system for every minute of her contract. If she looked away for too many seconds or shifted in her chair, she'd have to scan her face back from 3 separate angles, a process she ended up doing several times a day. Now, I'm not going to read this whole article because it's long and you get the idea. But every time I hear horror stories about employers like this, I can't help but think that the worst part isn't even the privacy nightmare. It's the fact that this type of employee abuse doesn't even work. Companies want to do this because the way they see it, even if the employee is paid a salary, they figure they can still break down their labor costs by dollars spent over time. So they want to maximize the amount of work they're getting per dollar spent. But the problem is that people don't produce a constant volume and quality of work, and you can't force them to. People get tired, they get distracted, they get bored, they need to rest, recharge, reset. So if you care about maximizing output, you need a process and a framework that bakes that in as a feature and doesn't try and squash it like a bug. And when people are tired and don't care about their work, you get security. Well, that's a nice to have. Former OnlyFans employees could access users' and models' personal information. Addresses, passports, bank statements, and other sensitive personal data were viewable long after leaving the company. Some former OnlyFans support staff employees still had access to users' data, including sensitive financial and personal information, even after they've stopped working for the company used by sex workers to sell nudes and porn videos. According to the source and OnlyFans users who spoke to Motherboard, depending on what a user is seeking help with, support tickets may contain their credit card information, driver's licenses, passports, full names, addresses, bank statements, how much they've earned on OnlyFans or spent, know your customer selfies where the creator holds up an ID next to their face for verification, and model release forms. So my question is, why does a support staff need access to all of this information? I can understand a small subset of it for identity verification, maybe the last 3 or 4 digits of your credit card, the person's full name. But seriously, passports, bank statements? I mean, let's even give them all the benefit of the doubt and assume that they're calling in because they've got a problem with their payouts or something. The support staff should just kick that over to accounting, and then accounting should be the only people that have access to that particular data. This is what happens when security is not treated as a feature and built from the ground up. You can't do security after the fact. And even if you could, leaving it as something to get around to later means it never gets gotten around to later. You need to do risk assessment early before you go live so that you can identify what's most important and valuable and at risk. Then you do threat modeling to explore how those risks might be exposed. And you design your systems and your processes with those things in mind. Like, entire books have been written on this shit. And we hear about data leaks and breaches like every single day in the news. And yet I've never seen a company do this right in 20 years. It's a shame that they have this large company and feel they can play with people's lives like this, the former employee said. There are already so many things they are in trouble for, and privacy should not be one of them. Everyone on that platform, especially sex workers, need to have their information be safe, and it isn't. In my opinion, one of OnlyFans' biggest problems is that they've never positioned themselves as a platform for adult content. Even to this day, they try to position themselves as a social media network. In the adult industry, the privacy of the models and performers tends to be taken very seriously because of safety concerns. But if OnlyFans sees themselves as a platform for content creators in general, rather than for adult performers, then they're going to treat privacy and security just as any other social media platform would. And social media has a horrible track record for privacy. Speaking of social media, YouTube CEO says platform is valuable for teens' mental health. YouTube Chief Executive Officer Susan Wojcicki said Google's video platform is beneficial to adolescents' mental health amid growing concern that rival Instagram may be toxic for teenage girls. We certainly do see for a lot of really tough issues that YouTube can be a really valuable resource, Wojcicki said in a Bloomberg television interview. So body positivity, mental health, we see a lot of creators actually talk about mental health, and that for a lot of kids, really it destigmatizes and enables people to talk about what's happening and what's going on with them. So we do take it very seriously. This is a pretty short article, and Wojcicki's basically just trying to capitalize on the negative press that Instagram is getting. It's also likely that since this was a television interview, which I didn't watch, by the way, that they brought up the subject and put her on the spot. But I think it would be prudent to bring up this older article from NBC only 3 years ago. YouTube's dark side could be affecting your child's mental health. As parents increasingly question the effects technology has on their children's health and well-being, many are alarmed by the slew of reports coming out about malicious content on YouTube targeting children as young as 2 years old. In recent months, parents and psychotherapists have reported that perpetrators have manipulated content from well-known beloved children's franchises, such as Entertainment One's Peppa Pig, Nickelodeon's Paw Patrol, and Disney's Frozen and Mickey Mouse, and inserted inappropriate and disturbing content involving popular characters. So if we're talking about content that's directly targeting children for criminal or malicious purposes, then yeah, that's a problem. But I suspect that a lot of what's coming under fire is probably parody videos made by people who intend for them to be funny, and their videos are targeted at teenagers and adults and not young children. Either way, I think it's the responsibility of parents to monitor and control what their children are doing online, and it shouldn't really be YouTube's problem. I just wanted to point out how hilarious it is to hear YouTube CEO say that YouTube is positive for youth mental health. And speaking of free speech and censorship, the big delete inside Facebook's crackdown in Germany. Days before Germany's federal elections, Facebook took what it called an unprecedented step, the removal of a series of accounts that worked together to spread COVID-19 misinformation and encourage violent responses to COVID restrictions. The crackdown, announced September 16th, was the first use of Facebook's new, quote, coordinated social harm policy aimed at stopping not state-sponsored disinformation campaigns, but otherwise typical users who have mounted an increasingly sophisticated effort to sidestep rules on hate speech or misinformation. I am definitely going to be doing a video on free speech, censorship, and big tech, probably very soon. It's a huge topic, and I have a lot of very strong opinions on it. All I want to say here is that the words days before elections, misinformation, and social harm all send chills up my spine. Now, as for anything medical related, the only thing I'm ever going to say on this channel is that if you have medical questions, you need to go see a doctor. Not a YouTube video, not a Facebook post or group, not the internet. The only people whose opinions matter when it comes to your body and your health is yours and your doctor's. This is about free speech and censorship to me. And I agree that Facebook, being a private company, has the legal right to decide what to distribute on their platforms. I just wish, and this is my own personal opinion, that social media companies would take more of a stand against governments in favor of protecting free speech and against these Orwellian ideas that some content needs to be sequestered because of extremely abstract and non-objective ideas like harm or misinformation. In my opinion, the social harm here is depriving free individuals of their ability to access whatever information, factual or bullshit, that they choose, and to use their own rational judgment in order to make up their own minds on whatever the hell they want to. When someone has an opinion on what information I should or shouldn't be exposed to, then I have strong opinions on where that person can stick certain unpleasant objects. And speaking of unpleasantness, let's talk about crime. Ransomware gangs are complaining that other crooks are stealing their ransoms. Ransomware gangs are shocked to find out that cyber crooks will scam other criminals if they can. Cyber criminals using a ransomware as a service scheme have been spotted complaining that the group they rent the malware from could be using a hidden backdoor to grab ransomware payments for themselves. So let me get this straight. Ransomware is now such a big business that there are SaaS services available for ransomware attackers. I'm going to start sounding like a broken record here, but the reason this exists is because companies and government agencies just don't take security seriously. And it's apparently grown so out of control that the ransomware black market is starting to look like any other normal industry out there. And just like any normal industry out there, the companies are all run by crooks. But the good news is that if these companies weren't run by crooks, then they might be run by AI that will kill us all. Tesla on Autopilot slammed into police cars despite flashing lights, lawsuit says. Officers say Tesla failed to detect 4 vehicles, 6 people, and, a police dog. Tesla has been sued by 5 Texas police officers who were injured when a Tesla Model X, is it Model X or Model 10? I don't know. In autopilot mode, crashed into police vehicles that were stopped and had their flashing lights turned on. On February 27th, 2021, a Tesla Model X, I'm just going to say Model X until someone corrects me, engaged in autopilot and equipped with Tesla's proprietary system of safety features, crashed into several police officers who were engaged in a traffic stop in a blocked-off lane of traffic on the East X freeway in Texas. All were badly injured, the lawsuit says. The officers include 4 Montgomery County constables and a Splendora police officer, according to Houston Public Media article. I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea of self-driving vehicles, but it's starting to look like they're just not there yet. And the reason I started this channel is because I'm seeing the technical and professional standards in my industry just get lower and lower as time goes on. There's so much money to be made in developing tech at the moment, but there's not enough qualified people to build it all. And so companies are desperate to hire talent, and so they're settling with what they can get. And I want to believe that Tesla employs the absolute best and the brightest in the world and has the most stringent quality standards. But that would be insanely expensive, and Tesla cars are surprisingly approachable depending on what model you want. As a professional software developer with over 20 years working in the tech industry, I see the low quality standards that get shipped every single day. And the idea that when I hit the brakes in my car, just for example, that my brake press is not automatically going to the brakes, but it's going through some programmer's code first, well, you can call me techphobe.